progress.
Hello, my name is Melanie. I'm a Business Grinds teacher from Business Grinds Ireland. And today we'll be looking at Chapter 1, Unit 1 in the Leaving Cert. And in particular, we're looking at competitive and cooperative relationships in business and between the stakeholders in particular in business. So the first thing we're going to look at is to classify and describe the relationship that it can exist between stakeholders. So, like a business and like a person, no man is an island. Like a business, no business is an island. They don't operate by themselves. So many other stakeholders are involved with that business, whether they're internal stakeholders, which are the most obvious, like the employer, the employee, the manager. But then you've got the external stakeholders, like the most obvious, then again, the consumer. You have the suppliers, the producers, the government, service providers, interest groups. So all of these stakeholders exist with a business. And then also, like any relationships, the business has to manage these relationships. So again, just as a reminder, this is an important definition that you need to know. Stakeholders are individuals, groups, and organizations that are affected by the policies and actions of the business. And they can either be affected both positively or negatively, as we will be going on further to look at. So the first type of a relationship we're going to look at, there's two types. The first type is a cooperative relationship. So as you can see there, a cooperative relationship is mutually beneficial. So it's a win-win. So when the examiner is looking at your paper and they want to see relationship and you write down cooperative, they'll want to see the words working towards a common goal, and it's a win-win relationship. So it's when both stakeholders are working towards a common goal and they both win. It's positive for both of them. So remember to always put the word common goal and win-win to get your marks. An example of a cooperative relationship is a purchasing manager and a supplier. So a purchasing manager who will be buying from a supplier, they will have to pay them back usually within 30 days of buying the items. But sometimes they might experience some cash flow problems and they might ask the creditor, which in this case is the supplier, if they can their uh, extend their credit period. So maybe they ask for an extra month or 2 months, usually max. And if the supplier is agreeable to that, the purchasing manager can overcome its cash flow problem and hopefully pay the supplier then. The supplier gets paid and he also maintains a great relationship with that purchasing manager. So it's a win-win relationship. The supplier gets paid, the purchasing manager pays, but it gets a bit of an extension on when he has to pay. So it's mutually beneficial. So this is a question that comes up on the higher level Leaving Cert paper and on the ordinary level. We're looking at 2017. We have, first of all, explained the term cooperative relationship between stakeholders in a business. How would you do that? Can you remember? Exactly. You're working towards a common goal. It's a win-win. Now we have to describe one example of a cooperative relationship that could arise between each of the following pairs of stakeholders. So because of time, we're only going to have a chance to look at one of these. So we're going to look at the cooperative relationship between the employer and employee. So an example of a cooperative relationship is a fair wage, which reflects work being done and qualifications and skills of employees, is offered by the employer, and a fair day's work is provided by the employee. So the employee is doing a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. This is a cooperative relationship. So how does the employee benefit and how does the employer benefit? We need to stay both. So the employee benefits from being rewarded good pay and conditions for their work if they meet agreed targets. So they meet the targets or they give a fair day's work. And the employer benefits from increased productivity, staff motivation, higher profits caused by the employees working hard, job satisfaction. So they're both working. It's a win-win. Is this always the case between the employer and employee? Well, no, it's not. It's usually, it can be quite often a competitive relationship. Why is that? It's because the employer will want to pay the employee as little as they possibly can, and the employee will want to be paid as much as they possibly can. So it is a competitive relationship, but it can also be a cooperative relationship, and we've given an example there. So like all relationships, like we were saying, they are dynamic and they can change. Now we're looking at the other side of the coin. It's a win-lose relationship. One loses, yay. One wins, yay. One loses, boo. So it's a competitive relationship. A competitive relationship exists when one stakeholder benefits, yay, at the other party's expense, boo. It's a win-lose relationship. An example of this can be an investor and an entrepreneur. Maybe you watched the show Dragon's Den. The dragons are always looking for the biggest share in the company, and the entrepreneur is always wanting to give the little amount of share of their company or the equity of their company in order to get capital from the investors. So an investor will want a high return on investment. They'll usually want to return a full, we were paid in full, and then also part ownership of the company. It's a competitive relationship because they both want different things. If they negotiate for a higher return from the entrepreneur, the investor will receive a higher share of profits and higher dividends. The investor will win at the expense of the poor entrepreneur who will lose, who has to give a higher percentage of their profits from the business. So it's a win-lose relationship. But there are benefits to the consumer often from competitive relationships. Consumers can benefit from two producers who are competing on lower prices, increased choice, increased quality, and better customer service and experience. So if you have two producers producing quite similar products, they have to differentiate themselves. So that will be better for the consumer. It might also be good for the producer because they're more aware of their customers and they're more aware of their needs. But it oftentimes can be a lose situation in that they have lower profits, especially if they're providing lower prices. So remember, a competitive relationship is win-lose, and cooperative relationship is win-win. So what did we learn in today's class? Review of learning. Can you write a definition of a stakeholder? So can you remember, would you be able to write a definition of a stakeholder? A stakeholder, remember, is an individual, group, and organizations that are affected by the policies and actions of a business. Can you write a list of at least 5 stakeholders of a small to medium enterprise? Can you write a list? So you can think of employer, employee, manager, interest groups, investors. You should know all the stakeholders and you should be able to write a definition of each stakeholder. That will or could come up very likely in an exam, in class exam, or one of the state exams. Write a definition of a cooperative relationship. A cooperative relationship is when both stakeholders are working towards a common goal. It's a win-win. Write a definition of a competitive relationship. A competitive relationship is a win-lose. It's when one stakeholder benefits at the other party's expense. And what are the benefits of a competitive relationship? Well, if you think of many producers competing in a similar market, it could lead to lower prices for the consumer. better quality for the consumer, better variety for the consumer, and it could mean that it could be more diverse. So that's today's lesson. I hope you have learned something from today. If you have, please subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to give me a follow um, over on Instagram, you can do. And if you'd like information on my grinds for the Leaving Cert Business Studies syllabus, you can find my email address below. Thank you for listening and all the best in your studies.